Hi, folks, and welcome to the Brazilian Grand Prix preview podcast with myself, Manish Patel, looking ahead to the weekend at Interlagos. A weekend that really promises to be an intriguing one, particularly in amongst the midfield, which I will talk about later. But I guess I have to start the podcast with one of the biggest stories going into the weekend in Brazil, and that's Alex Albon has been confirmed at Red Bull for 2020, and Pierre Gasly has been confirmed at Toro Rosso for next season. My thoughts: I think Alex Albon really deserves his drive at Red Bull next season. I think as the season's progressed, I think Alex Albon has really improved. I think he's matured. Of course, there have been one or two mistakes, and let's not forget this is his rookie season, so he is going to make mistakes inevitably. But it's about learning from those mistakes, and I think Albon is only going to continue to get better. And I think as the season has progressed, I think Albon has really improved, and I think he's come on leaps and bounds as well. So I think Alex Albon, for me, I think he deserves his drive at Red Bull for 2020. And then Pierre Gasly, it's first half of the season. Let's make no mistake, it was a very difficult first half of the season for the Frenchman at Red Bull, and unfortunately he struggled. But I have to say, going back to Toro Rosso in the I think 7 or 8 races that he's been with the team since the second half of this season, he feels a lot more comfortable, particularly in amongst the team surroundings at Toro Rosso. There's less pressure on him compared to when he was at Red Bull, and seems to be a lot happier as well. And you know what? Fair play to Pierre. I think he's done a really decent job since he's gone back to Toro Rosso this year. And in the 7 races that he has driven for Toro Rosso this season, he's finished in the points 4 times out of those 7 races, and including a 7th place finish in Japan. So I think Gasly, for me, he deserves to stay with Toro Rosso for next season. Be interesting to see how Toro Rosso how they perform next season, and whether they can step it up even more next season to be in amongst the top of the midfield this time around. But I have to say, like I say, I think Pierre Gasly deserves to be at Toro Rosso for 2020. I think he's a lot happier. He seems to be comfortable in the team surroundings, and likewise Alexander Albon. I think he's done a very good job since he's been at Red Bull second half of this season, and I think he's only going to continue to get better. So with Albon confirmed at Red Bull, and with Gasly confirmed at Toro Rosso, that just leaves 1 seat to be confirmed for the 2020 grid to be completed, I should say, and that is at Williams, where it seems more and more likely that Nicholas Latifi, the Canadian, will land the seat alongside George Russell next season. So Latifi would be the 2nd Canadian on the grid alongside Lance Stroll, and Latifi's had a decent season in Formula 2 this year, taking 4 race wins, and is currently 2nd in the drivers' standings. But if Latifi was to take the seat at Williams next season, then that would mean no seat for Nico Hülkenberg, which would be, for me, a real shame. I said it in the last podcast when I reviewed the US Grand Prix. I think it'd be a real shame for the Formula 1 field to lose a talent like Nico Hülkenberg, and wherever he'd go, I genuinely feel that he would do a very solid job, and you know what you'd get from Nico. Be interesting to see what the future holds for the German, and I would love to see him back in Formula 1 in 2021. And I don't think, if there are any teams that are looking for drivers in 2021, which I'm sure there will be, then I think Nico will be right up there. Would Hülkenberg consider a reserve and test driver role? I'm not really sure that's what he'd want to do. But having said that, he did do that early on in his Formula 1 career, and then he ended up getting a race seat at Force India, now known as Racing Point. So it has happened to Hülkenberg before, but this time round, can I see him wanting to take a reserve or test driver? I don't think so. So be a real shame if Hülkenberg is not on the grid for 2020. But like I said, it seems more and more likely that Nicholas Latifi will take the 2nd seat at Williams alongside George Russell. So speaking about Nico Hülkenberg, so he'll be in his final 2 races for Renault. And speaking of Renault, they're actually currently in a battle for 5th in the Constructors, that are 18 points clear Racing Point, and Racing Point in turn are only 1 point ahead of Toro Rosso. So I mentioned about the midfield battle going to really intensify. I think it's going to be this midfield battle is going to be really close in Brazil, but also in Abu Dhabi, the season finale, where there really is a lot to play for. Personally, for me, I think Renault have got just about enough to keep ahead of Racing Point and Toro Rosso as well. I think the 18-point margin, I think it'll be a bit too much for Racing Point and Toro Rosso to claw back. But as for Renault, I think they made decent strides this season. Not perfect, but I think with Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon at the team next season, I think they'll be expecting big things, and I'm sure everyone at Renault will definitely be looking to challenge more at the top end and to be at least challenging for podiums next season. So Renault, like I say, I think they will hold on to 5th place in the Constructors, and basically then the battle for 6th, I think, is going to be really good down to the wire. Racing Point, I mentioned, they're only just 1 point ahead of Toro Rosso, and both teams I have to say, have been evenly matched this season. Racing Point, I think, this year it's been more of a, not turbulent, but I think it's been more of a turnaround season considering what happened to Force India last season. But I think Racing Point, I think they will be looking to, like Renault, I think they'll be looking to make big strides next season and going into 2021. So really, I think this weekend, I think one of the big battles will be Racing Point against Toro Rosso to see whether Racing Point can further extend their 1 point margin over Toro Rosso, or whether Toro Rosso can overtake Racing Point in the Constructors. And speaking of the Constructors, I think it's well highlighted and documented the fact that the higher you finish up in the Constructors, the more points that you can, not more points, but more money that you can gain for each team. So every place really does count in the Constructors. So I'm sure Racing Point will be doing everything they can to at least finish 6th in the Constructors, whereas Toro Rosso will be doing everything they can to make sure that they can overtake Racing Point in the Constructors. So I genuinely feel that Renault will finish 5th, just ahead of Racing Point and Toro Rosso. But then another battle, actually, that I don't think it's been highlighted that much, but I think it's worth highlighting the fact that Haas, they're only 7 points behind Alfa Romeo for 8th in the Constructors, and it really is all to play for in amongst the midfield. I mentioned about the fact that in the Constructors, the higher you finish, the more money you can get, and it even goes down to whether you finish 7th or 8th in the Constructors. And Haas are only 7 points behind Alfa Romeo, so an Alfa have not exactly had the strongest of second halves to the season. So 7 points is not a lot, and Haas can, if they can have a strong weekend, although they've not had many strong weekends, particularly in the second half and throughout the whole season, really. But if they can put a really strong weekend together, Haas, then you never know, they could even take 8th in the Constructors away from Alfa Romeo. So without doubt, Haas will be looking to bounce back after a catastrophic, see what I did there, a catastrophic weekend at their home Grand Prix in the US. So I'm sure everyone at Haas will really, to be honest with you, we really can't wait for 2019 to end and going into looking forward to 2020, everyone at Haas. So I'm sure they'll be looking forward to that. But as I say, so Haas are only 7 points behind Alfa Romeo for 8th in the Constructors, and they'll definitely be looking to put one over the Italian, should I say Italian? Or Swiss team, I should say. But yeah, so Haas and Alfa Romeo will be battling for 8th in the Constructors, and Renault will be looking to hold on to 5th ahead of Racing Point and Toro Rosso. So a lot to play for in amongst the midfield. So in other news in Formula 1, so going into the weekend, so Charles Leclerc will have a 10th place grid penalty for the Grand Prix at Interlagos. So he will of course have a new engine following what happened in the US. So Charles Leclerc will have a 10th place grid penalty for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Bit of a blow, really, because what he'll be looking to do, Charles, is at least finish best of the rest in the Drivers' Championship behind both Mercedes drivers. And if he was to achieve that, if he was to finish ahead of Max Verstappen and his more experienced teammate in Sebastian Vettel, then you have to say that it's been a very good season for Charles Leclerc. Okay, he's not in contention to win the Drivers' Championship this year, but to finish behind both Mercedes drivers and to then be best of the rest is no disgrace at all. And I think Charles, this is only his second season in Formula One, and to think the journey that he's been on, particularly outside of Formula One, to get to where he is right now, I think Charles has come a really long way, and I'm one of his biggest fans. I think he's had a fantastic 2019 season, and I think him, Max Verstappen, and so many other young drivers currently in Formula One, they are the future of Formula One, and I think Charles is only going to continue to get better. So, a bit of a blow that he has got a 10-place grid penalty for the Brazil Grand Prix this weekend, but no doubt he'll be extra determined to want to fight his way through the field and to really secure his third place in the Drivers' Championship behind both Mercedes drivers. Coming on to McLaren. So, McLaren, it's been a really good 2019 season for them, and for me, they've been one of the teams of the season for me, without doubt. There's still a real possibility for Carlos Sainz to finish in the top 6 of the Drivers' Championship, which would be a phenomenal achievement, not just for the team, but for Carlos himself. And then Lando Norris, I mentioned about Alex Albon, him being in his rookie season. Lando Norris has had a very decent debut and rookie season in Formula One, and there's still a chance for Lando to finish in the top 10 of the Drivers' Championship. So I'm sure he'll be looking to achieve that come the end of the season. In what has been a solid debut season for Lando Norris, I think he can take so many positives away from the season. I think McLaren as a whole can take a lot of positives from the 2019 season, and definitely something to build on going into the future. So fingers crossed we can see McLaren at the top end of the Formula One grid, where they should be, really. And then just finally, just to wrap up the podcast, so it's been highly documented and highly said that there'll be no Toto Wolff in Brazil this weekend for Mercedes, as he will be in Europe to focus on other topics. But even so, even without Toto, no doubt that the hunger in amongst the drivers and team to really end the season on a high and to be able to win the final 2 races of the season. And Lewis hasn't actually had many poles this season. He's only had the 4 pole positions compared to his teammate 5, and Charles Leclerc has had, if I remember correctly, I think he's had 7 poles this season, the Monegasque driver. So Lewis will definitely be looking to improve on his qualifying record this season and be looking to get the better of his teammate and finish ahead of him on a number of pole positions this season. So it's Mercedes has still got a lot to play for, and for sure they won't be taking the foot off the gas. That's for sure. So that's my look ahead to the Brazilian Grand Prix this weekend. Promises to be, like I say, a really intriguing weekend, particularly in amongst the midfield, and I'm really looking forward to it. So if you want to get involved with the podcast, so you can message me at Baggies20 on Twitter, and also if you want to talk about the podcast as well, talk about anything Formula One, then feel free to message me again at Baggies20 on Twitter, and I look forward to reading your comments. And if you want to get involved as well with the podcast as well, don't forget you can also message me as well, and I look forward to hearing your comments. Hope you all enjoy the Brazilian Grand Prix, and I will catch up with you guys later. Bye for now.